It's a chilling scene. The man killed by police narrated live on Facebook by his girlfriend.
And the officer just shot him in his arm.
Diamond Reynolds described what happened in real time as her boyfriend Philando Castile lay dead next to her after having been shot by a cop in Falcon Heights, Minnesota. Castile had been pulled over for a bad taillight and allegedly told the police he was licensed to carry. His mother said he was, quote, black in the wrong place. Reynolds later explained why she kept rolling as this tragedy played out before her eyes.
I wanted to put it on Facebook and go viral so that the people could see. So that the people could see. I wanted the people to determine who was right and who was wrong.
The Minnesota shooting comes on the heels of another police altercation that left a black man dead. Cell phone video shows in stunning detail how Alton Sterling died. Police officers pinning him to the ground, then shots are fired. Sterling was reportedly armed, but his gun was in his pocket during the altercation.
He was really confused. He didn't know what was going on or why they were there. He asked them before, when they started trying to push him against the car, what did I do wrong? What's going on?
Various organizations are now tracking the number of unarmed blacks killed by police officers. 38 in 2015, one every 9 days. 12 so far in 2016. Many of the incidents are well known, like when Walter Scott was shot in the back in North Charleston, South Carolina. Others are not, like Richard Perkins from Oakland, California. Patterson Brown from Richmond, Virginia. Betty Jones in Chicago. And Christian Taylor from Arlington, Texas. This epidemic has been front and center since August of 2014 when Michael Brown was shot and killed by Officer Darren Wilson in Ferguson, Missouri, but it shows no signs of abating. Joining me to discuss this are Tina Opie. Tina's a Babson College professor. Tina, good to see you. Thanks for being here. Ed DeVoe, former Watertown police chief, now a VP at DataViz. Good to see you too, Ed. And Jabari Asim is executive editor of the NAACP's Crisis Magazine. He also teaches at Emerson. Jabari, thank you for being here again as well. You know, starting with you, Tina, for too many Americans, white Americans, the killing of young black men by police entered our consciousness just maybe 23 months ago because of Michael Brown. Has anything changed in those 23 months, or is it just like Groundhog Day?
Oh gosh, I actually feel ambivalent about that. Jim, it's a little bit of both, because I cannot believe that yet again today I'm going to figure out how to explain to my two children what has happened to yet another black person.
You didn't go to work today because of this, right?
Absolutely, I couldn't go to work. I had to stay home. I got a call from a friend who was going through something similar, and I just decided to give myself a mental health day.
Has anything changed in these past 23 months, Jabari?
Well, I think there's been some incremental advances in terms of civilian oversight, in terms of review commissions, in terms of online campaigns like Campaign Zero, which documents police incidents around the country. But certainly not enough change.
You know, it seems to me, Ed DeVoe, as a layperson, there are only two possibilities here: racism or rank ineptitude. Let's get to the latter in a couple of seconds. The governor of Minnesota, Drayton, said today that he believes if Castile had been white, he would not be dead. Here's what Jesse Williams said when he won the Humanitarian Award at the BET Awards in late June. Here's what Williams had to say.
What we've been doing is looking at the data, and we know that police somehow manage to de-escalate, disarm, and not kill white people every day.
Are there cops who see blacks differently than they see whites sitting in a car or walking down a street?
It's possible, yes, of course. I mean, they bring to the table, to their job, what they've learned throughout their lives. We would like to think that there's all kinds of training to kind of separate that.
Is there that training, though? I mean, is there sensitivity training? Is there training to deal with people who maybe aren't like you in a lot of ways?
Yeah, I think, you know, if you look at just the two most recent shootings, I think there's a lot of cops across the country that would think they personally would have done things differently and done it better. I think, you know, we're learning as we go along. The videos really help to show us where we're good and where we're not doing a good job. And these are two good examples where cops didn't do a very good job.
Are blacks seen differently from whites by police? You have a personal story that's not so pleasant.
Yes, our son, we recently moved to Natick from Wellesley, Massachusetts, and our son, Kennedy, was 12 at the time when he was targeted racially, we believe, by another family. And our son did something juvenile as many juvenile boys will do, and he was punished for that, but that punishment was not considered sufficient by the parents. So they then, their daughter began to create stories about our son, and thank God, and they went to the police. Thank God there was video surveillance. Thank God there were witnesses who could attest to our son, and he was cleared of that. But had that not been the case, who knows what would have happened?
You know, this whole issue about does the color of someone's skin affect how they are treated by someone in power? You know, while most of the focus has been on people like Ed DeVoe, cops, Jabari, of late, there was a study out of the University of Virginia that I saw about a month ago. Literally, I had to read twice. 58% of first and second year medical students and residents thought that blacks had thicker skin than white people did. They thought that their nerve endings were, 40% thought their nerve endings, blacks' nerve endings, were less sensitive. So this is a far, far bigger issue than just what a man or woman in a blue outfit thinks about people who don't look like them, yes?
Yes, I think that study can be traced all the way back to the 18th century when Thomas Jefferson wrote Notes on the State of Virginia, in which he wrote with some confidence that black people don't feel physical pain or emotional pain in the same way that white people did. So when I saw that study about the thicker skin, I thought you could draw a straight line from that study to Jefferson's words.
But so when you hear that and you trace the history, you started this discussion by saying there's some incremental change, but at the same time, in some areas, there hasn't been change in 150 years.
Right, and I think that lends credence to the skepticism that you're seeing everywhere in terms of, okay, so we're calling the Department of Justice to come in and investigate these latest shootings. Yippee, what does that lead to?
Wasn't that better than having the local police force investigate? In Ferguson, it led to an order that ultimately the city council decided to comply with, no?
But it didn't lead to a conviction.
Yeah.
And the only incident I can think of that led to a conviction.
Walter Scott in South Carolina.
Well, that's the second one. The other one was Kai Gurley in New York. But the policeman won't be doing any time.
Well, let's stay on that for a second. I mean, I speak a lot to a former colleague of yours, Bill Evans, who says, obviously Commissioner Boston says, every time this happens with a bad cop, it trickles down onto the best cops he had. Everybody looks at every cop differently. When there's virtually no accountability, what Jabari said is right. I did some research today. In fewer than 10% of these cases, when an unarmed black man is shot by a white cop, are they even charged? And in somewhere in the neighborhood of 2% of the cases, this is in 2015, they are convicted. Not only is that bad for the victim and the community, it's bad for your own cops, is it not? When essentially there's no accountability for what we see with our own eyes?
Of course. I mean, I think a lot of cops would, you know, when the Department of Justice comes in, you know, I would applaud that, thinking that it's going to be done fairly. And I think a lot of cops have looked at some of these videos and said, that guy's going to jail, that guy's going to jail, that guy's going to jail.
And
it
they
doesn't
don't.
happen. You know, so I think, you know, people lose confidence in the good cops that are out there because they start to put us all in the same basket because the bad ones are not being held accountable.
I want to talk about, you've all mentioned videos now for a second. Here's James Comey. We see him in the news the last few days, obviously, about something very different, the head of the FBI. But he talked recently about something. He didn't call it the Ferguson effect, but that's essentially what he is describing in the term that others have used. Listen to James Comey.
I spoke to officers privately in one big city precinct who described being surrounded by young people with mobile phones held high, taunting them when they get out of their cars. They said to me, "We feel under siege and we don't feel much like getting out of our cars."
Do you buy this? I mean, he cited statistics. He talked about some major cities. People say that in places like Chicago, cops are so not only scrutinized, but people are so hostile to the cops, they don't want to help. Homicide rate up. Are you buying that or no?
I'm buying it because cops have no credibility in our communities.
Cops across the board have no
Across the
credibility.
board. I don't see how I, as an intelligent, common sense, rational human being, would be inclined to trust a policeman on first encounter based on my personal experience and based on what I know about the nation that I live in. So that makes sense. I find it very ironic that the policeman or that the FBI director would say they feel under siege. Imagine how we feel.
Amen.
Are these, you know, the videos, you've all mentioned videos, I think at least, or two, maybe three, in positive ways. I have mixed feelings, I have to say. On one hand, I say to myself, yes, we have to see these things, because if you don't see it, I mean, look what we lived through for prior Rodney King. Well, it can't be true. If they arrested the guy, he had to have been doing something bad. The flip side is the constant loops of this, Tina. When you turn it on and you see Walter Scott shot in the back 500 times in one night, I don't know if it desensitizes people, but it surely to me seems to dehumanize people, and you rarely see an image of a white person being killed, I should
Right.
say, since maybe Lee Harvey Oswald. Where do you fall in this thing about the obligation of the press to show it and the responsibility of the citizenry to view it?
So to the first question, I do think that the media can make it available. But I will tell you, as a citizen, I chose not to watch
Why?
either of those videos because I think it's traumatizing. I actually feel like I may be suffering from PTSD at this point. And I think that rather than just showing, what the media needs to do is show the video if they choose to, but immediately jump into action planning. There needs to be, we've had enough sort of ambulance chasing, looking at the brutality of these videos.
What is the action plan?
What would we do if this had happened in Boston? Right now, what would you say to the chief of police, to the mayor? What would be our call to action? What would we be looking to accomplish in Boston if this were to happen? Let's have dash cams. I know people say that that doesn't matter, right? And
We're about to have body cameras released on a voluntary basis
Yeah.
in Boston at the end of the month.
even though
100.
the body cams in
They
the
tend to
first
fall
instance,
off.
exactly,
Yeah.
tend to fall
So
off.
what's the solution to that? Your mic fell down. You got to hold it up a little bit. So let's end with this. I mean, it seems to me that community policing, a more diverse police force, is a ridiculously obvious first step. That matters a lot, no?
Yes, but look right here in Boston where we have questionable procedures with the hiring of policemen most recently. Where they went down to the bottom of the list, the least qualified policemen, and added several, most of whom were white. Very questionable hiring procedures.
Well, Commissioner Evans says because of some of the rules, including veterans' preferences, they're trying to use the academy to get a more diverse police force. What do you say as an insider? What's part of the solution here other than diversifying the police? What does one do so that we don't have to see another video tomorrow and the next day and the next day?
Well, I think obviously we need to have better dialogue to hear that there's no confidence in police. I mean, there's 99% of the cops go out there every day, and the last thing they want to do is pull their gun. They want to help people, protect their
But you
communities. and
understand
get
that
out.
when you hear it, don't you?
I understand that, and I understand what you're talking about with community policing. If there was somebody there that knew that guy that was in front of the store selling the videos and had been there all the time and knew him, hey, that's so-and-so, instead of two cops showing up that had never dealt with them and didn't know what to do, and their tactics probably weren't the greatest. But I agree with the hiring process. We can't be above average police departments unless we hire above average people. But people are losing confidence in police, so people don't want to come on the job, Jim. You know that. And so we have to, come together. If you want better police departments, you've got to help us recruit the best so we can be the best.
We have to leave it right there, Tina. Thank you so much. Good to see you. Ed, thank you.
Thank you.
Jabari, I appreciate your
Thanks.
time as well.